My team gets to work with a lot of different departments. We work cross-departmentally. And so anything that is beneficial to our community, my job is to make sure that you know about it and that you're engaged and you're involved. I started, it'll be about 3 years in December, and then the pandemic started, right? Like 2 months later. So I really don't know how it looks outside of being in a pandemic. So we had to quickly pivot and get creative on how we reach folks. So this project that you're going to hear about today is something super excited. It's something that was brought forth by our planning department. They received a grant. And so I'm going to ask a little bit of questions to these folks here. So first we have Sean DeCourcy. He is the director of our historic preservation. So he's the historic preservation director. And then we have Carson Anderson, who is the former director. So he retired and then he came back to work on this project. And so we are super excited. This man has a wealth of knowledge and information in his head, and we're so happy to have him a part of this process. And so we want to get this right. So we are changing, we're trying to figure it out, we're trying to get it right. We had a meeting a couple months ago in Del Paso Heights. We got feedback from you all on what could make the meeting better. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it better. So this will not be the last that you hear of us. We really want to hear from you. And so again, I welcome you. And I really just kind of want to get into a little bit about this project. So go ahead.
Can we introduce ourselves first?
Sure, absolutely. We want to do some introduction. So let's go ahead and start with Gabrielle. We're going to go down this way. So go ahead.
Hi,
We can't hear you.
my name is Gabrielle Knox, and I am Lynette Holmes' daughter.
And why are you here besides I brought you here?
I'm here to listen.
My name is Andrew Demetriou. I'm a graduate student at that state. I have to record one of the world histories for the project for volunteers. So I'm just excited to follow it.
Well, thank you for your help. We really appreciated your helping out on that and collecting those oral stories.
Which oral history did you record?
Patricia Canterbury. My name is Dan Funton. I'm with Shallow Baptist Church, and basically we have been in with the African American Experience Project. We were first involved in it, and now we heavy involved in it. So we are getting.
You were a community partner.
Yes.
Project.
Yes. Yes. So we are getting the release forms from the interviewee, and basically we on board, go forward. So looking forward to getting more done.
Hi, my name is Betty Williams. I'm the president of the Greater Sacramento NAACP. The local branch has been in Sacramento for 106 years. And so this project is, I'm glad I was invited up. You know what, let me bring that back. Probably sent me an email. And I just did not see it. But when you text me and said you were bringing food, I absolutely. Thank you very much.
Sam Starks, and I'm here to listen.
Hi, my name is Tasha. I'm a longtime resident of Meadowview, and I'm just here to learn about the project.
Thank you, Tasha.
Renee West, I'm the administrative support person for the Sojourner Truth Museum, and we were invited.
I'm Gigi Edwards. I'm a volunteer.
Michael Colbert, CEO of Serious Enterprises. We operate a live stream social media network called Come As You Are. We'll be launching it very soon. And I was invited by Ms. Kelly. Thank you.
My name is Paul Kelly, and I am Lynette's mom, and Gabrielle's grand. And I'm supporting what they do because I think that it's been a long time coming, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. One last thing. My family has been in Sacramento for over 100 years.
For over 100 years, that's history. We got a document.
Good evening, my name is Wanda Abney. I host a radio show on KDEE 97.5. It's called Full Circle. It's a talk show for women of color. But more importantly, I am a lifelong Sacramentan, was born and raised in Meadowview. In fact, my mom still lives right around the corner on 29th Street. I walked to this library many times as a child. And so when I saw the project, I knew that I wanted to be involved, not just to be able to spread the word as a media professional, but also because I love this city and I want to share whatever my knowledge that I can share with the project.
Thank you so much.
My name is Milman Harrison. I'm the Associate Vice Provost for undergraduate education at UC Davis. I'm also a professor in the Department of African American and African Studies. And I am working on a book project on the Black presence in the Central Valley of California. So I'm here because I want to know everybody and everybody's story. And I want to work with this project and perhaps even bring you more students to be able to collect more. I just want us to be able to work together. I've lived in Sacramento now for 30 some odd years. My wife was born and raised here. So we have deep roots in this area and just want to know how we can work together and how I can help. And you, I have to talk to you. I'm so happy to see you.
Welcome everyone. My name is Kristen Ross and I am an intern with the City of Sacramento's preservation team. I initially was interested in this in joining the team primarily because of this project and I wanted to be able to contribute to this.
Back here, hi everyone, my name is Kelly Rivas. I serve as the racial equity advisor for Mayor Steinberg. Previously as chief of staff the last 5 years and here to support and listen.
Hi, my name is Sonia Bradley. I am the Chief of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Visit Sacramento. Formerly their Chief Marketing Officer, but I've been in the role for about 1.5 years. And one of the things that we're developing are cultural itineraries to tell the greater, broader story of Sacramento. And so I saw this, I knew it was happening, but I saw the meeting was today via social media. So I'm glad to be here and kind of follow along and support where we can as well.
Thank you, Sonia.
Brad.
I'm Jonathan Burgess, better known as one of the Burgess brothers of Sacramento, but a descendant of a pioneer family of California before the state was even part of the Union. A phenomenal story about our ancestors that not only were pioneers of California, but eventually were pushed down to Sacramento as well. So I got invited. I'm here to listen and learn. I don't know much about the Sacramento historic history, but I do know some of the trailblazers that actually were part of this California Trailblazing Trail were mentioned in the book of Delilah Beasley along with my great grandfather.
And I'm Patricia Jones. I'm a native of Sacramento, born at Naval Air Force Base in the 50s, and my family members in the 50s. My mama ran for city council, so I'm here to get information and to.
Hi, my name is Don Hoffman. Like the gentleman over there, my family's been in Sacramento area for 100+ years. My great grandparents, my county. What is how we live this?
Third oldest Black church in Sacramento. My ancestors are from India and we've been in the Sacramento area for 100 years as well. I grew Sacramento. And I saw I was like one of all the other kids. And as I got older, I learned that the big house that my grandfather had bought, he lived with a 3-generational household, and restricted covenants. And when I talked to my family members about it, apparently my grandfather's contemporaries, who were farmers out in the city, told him, his name was Bishan, he said, Bishan, they aren't gonna let you live there. But he still think since he was a US veteran outside by his US citizenship, he got a VA loan to buy a house. So,
Well, thank you for joining us.
My name is Chandra and I'm from Fiji Island. I came here in 1984 and raised my 3 children. And my late husband, when he passed away, and then I have a hard life. So then, and then working as pianist in the nursing home for 18 years. And taking care of my husband as well in this pandemic, and we may not have too many employees, and we take care of hand to hand. So I'm blessed.
And we do have a couple folks on the Zoom. I'm not sure, are you guys able to come off mute and introduce yourself? I think I saw Marcus.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Marcus D. Smith. I'm a journalist with the Sacramento Bee's Equity Lab, covering Black communities in this wonderful city of Sacramento. I just wanted to check in and with the Zoom, because unfortunately I couldn't make it in person, but getting the email from the wonderful Lynette, just knowing how important that this topic of conversation is, I wanted to make sure that I was in somehow, some way in attendance. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, Marcus. We appreciate you. Sean? Feel free to come up. No, I thought it was another.
No.
Oh, that's your iPhone. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Tyree?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tyree Boyd Pate. I am the Associate Curator of Western History at the Autry Museum here in Los Angeles. And I have a particular emphasis in the African American experience in the West. And so naturally, when I heard about this via some listserv, I had to join the ranks and support you all from down here in SoCal, in hopes that something like this could ever come down to SoCal. So consider me an ally in solidarity, and looking forward to supporting in any way I can. Thank you.
Tyree, can you make sure you put your contact information in the chat so we can make sure that we follow up with you and keep you engaged in the process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
There is, the last name is Steinberg.
Gretchen Steinberg.
Feel free to come off mute. So there is also Gretchen Steinberg on as well. So thank you all. Oh, and I can't forget, want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Michael Harris. It's a Negro from Sacramento. That's my coach over here. So all, that I should have been, we never lost playing football around. He rolled my back like Ponto Villa out of the horse. No, seriously, I'm Michael Harris from Born and Raised in this community. I'm like the black dirty side of the coin. My sister is the nice shiny side. Represent everybody.
Hi, can I chime in too?
We all learned right here in this library.
Did somebody else want to chime in that was on? Go ahead. On Zoom?
Michael, thank you for.
Did someone?
Yeah, hi. My name is Sean Turner. I'm representing the Sacramento History Museum. We're very interested in what role we can play, because we're always interested in doing a better job reflecting the community.
Well, thank you all for joining us. So I'm gonna just kind of quickly go over kind of the schedule of even, oh, one other person, wanna introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Safara. I'm a recent graduate student of USC. I'm also born and raised in Sacramento, California. Also, in between pursuing my PhD in African American Studies. So I'm kind of just feeling, I can say, feeling two birds with one stone by, coming here and being part of the community, but also aspiring towards my PhD.
Well, thank you for joining us. And those of you on Zoom, if you put mute, unless you are asking a question, if you raise your hand, we can take you off mute so we can hear you. So,
And then I say one more thing, so Gretchen Steinberg is the representative of the Sacramento Modern, which is also part of Preservation Sacramento. Like the board of directors.
okay, thank you. So what we're gonna do, how today is gonna go, I'm just gonna ask these folks some questions in an informal format to kind of inform you guys about what this project is. And then we're gonna have some opportunity to kind of fellowship and kind of tell some of these stories, right? So we just did a quick introduction, but we also want to take this as an opportunity to capture stories. So this is the time, once we get through the nuts and bolts for you all to get the mic and kind of tell your story. And then after that, we will go outside and eat and just fellowship and keep telling those stories, right? So that is how today will go. At any point, feel free to, raise your hand if we say something that doesn't make sense or you got some questions, please feel free to raise your hand and we can address it right then and there. So we just talked high level. So there's this project. What is this project, Sean? What is this about?
So I think hearing your story was inspiring. And again, I'm Sean DeCourcy, the Preservation Director. And I'm the Historic Preservation Program. We are primarily focused on documenting Sacramento's history and preserving the physical embodiment of that history, the buildings, historic history. That's what we do within the planning department. And one way we do that is to do historic context. So this project is a historic context. Part of that context is stories and memories from the community. And so we have a component of this project that's recording oral histories. We've already reported several of them, and we're looking for more. We have a program set up to do that. We also have a consultant on board who is doing research. They've been hired because they specialize in historic research and documentation, so they're busy combing through the archives for the written record. We're also looking for, and have received quite a few, but are looking for more historic documents that may be in personal collections that can be part of the project. We won't take them, but we'll look at them and report them and give them copies of those to our consultants so they can incorporate those into their research. So those are the elements of the project. What I started to say is that these stories that we just heard and this history that goes back hundreds of years at time is the reason we're doing this project. That story is not told. It's not told in what we do and what we've done in the city's preservation office. We have ignored that story to our own detriment and to the detriment of the city and our citizens. So we're trying to fix it. And that's why we applied for this grant. The National Trust for Historic Preservation is a federally affiliated nonprofit. They funded the project, and we're trying to fix this shortcoming in our program by documenting the story. We need your help to help us bridge that gap between what's in the archives and what's been passed down through oral tradition and in the family stories. I can piggyback on what you just said. So historic preservation for so many years focused on buildings. And usually they had to be really excellent examples of design by some name brand architect and all of this pedigree stuff that have to do with the architectural beauty. And so probably about a decade ago, people in the preservation field began to realize we're missing the story. We're missing the story of the people, their lives. Began to look at how many properties were listed on, it's called the National Register, sort of the Federal Register of Historic Monuments. And it was just like this tiny number, you know, like Frederick Douglass's home in Washington DC, and like just like 5 or 6 or 10 out of thousands of properties. And so there's been a discussion for at least a decade about how we're going to do that. And so I think the main strategy was, let's do kind of overall histories of communities organized by themes, like the work of the community in addressing discrimination. So that's where the NAACP came in. And how did all the churches and the mosques and the community get established? Who was involved in that? Where were the businesses? Who were some of the early business people? When did people start getting into city government? So those are some of the themes, as we call them in the profession, that this history is going to be organized around. And then with that, we can go out and find things that may not be gorgeous examples of architecture, but they have these really rich stories connected with them. And that's what we're really trying to do here. After that, through oral histories and through you coming forward and bringing your story, so that we have a complete history of it.
And so you, Sean, mentioned some funding, and that's always top of mind. So before we go to funding, I kind of want to get to, like, why is the city doing this now? Like, why is the city caring about it now? We have somebody who gets to dedicate her whole job to racial equity. That's something unheard of, right? You got a community engagement manager that's brought on to bridge the gap. And now the city is investing in documenting African-American history.
So
And Kelly, feel free if you want to.
I wanted to say we did some of our first national register and local register nominations for buildings like Kyle's Temple and Shiloh Baptist, like maybe 8-9 years ago. And then we have the Stephon Clark murder, we have George Floyd. And so that stimulated a dialogue within the city government and nationally about Black social justice concerns. And so we see this project, we've been looking at ways the last few years of finding history as a way to tell a complete story that will address some of the social inequity by informing the public, informing Black folks as well as the white people what this history is, the history of discrimination and racism and all those things that shape the community. So that was sort of a starting point, I would say, for looking for money to fund something.
And I'm just trying to connect the dots for you all to show that there's some stuff going on in the city that hasn't happened before. You know, this lady here, Kelly, I gotta call her out. She's been responsible for helping to create this interim rapid response tool that we use on where money goes, right? Who we're contracting with. So it's a racial equity tool that we are now using that 2 years ago we weren't using it. So I just want to call it out and give credit when credit is due, that the city of Sacramento is trying to do something different. So hold them accountable for it, right? I think you had a question.
Are you going to publish something?
Yes, so we're going to get to that. So right after I talk about the funding, so you mentioned the funding. So there was a grant. How much was the grant to do this work? And I promise we're going to talk about what the final product is. So how much was the grant?
So the grant we received was for $50,000.
Okay.
The grant we asked for was for 80. We wanted to actually have people go out and document, do like a citywide survey. Once somebody do the historic context and the study and oral history, then go out and look at each building and study it. We didn't get that money, so we just got 50. We had to pare it back, so it's the historic context and the oral history are the primary scope identified in the grant proposal. Right.
And so what are you using the $50,000 for?
The $50,000 is going to pay our consultant to do the research that we identified as part of the project. So those professional historians are coming to the archives right now, and they're collecting all of the information to find conventional research.
And who is the consultant?
Yeah, the consultants, Page and Turnbull, they are kind of like a known entity all over California. They've done other studies like this, including one down in Santa Barbara. And some of their team members were also involved in doing the City of Los Angeles African American Historic Context Statement about 7 or 8 years ago. We had an RFP process. We were hoping to have a good group of people respond who had ideas about how to do this study. We were, I guess we were fortunate to get the response that we did get, but Page and Turnbull were the ones that had the best proposal, the best idea about how to go about doing the process.
Do you guys, do you have, when you mentioned the archive, does the city have, city of Sacramento have its own archives, or are you researching the state archive?
Both. The Center for Sacramento History is the archive that's run by the city, and there's a lot of great information there. They're looking at other sources. They're looking at in the state archives. They're looking at census research, public library records, newspapers, Black magazines, all those things.
Page and Turnbull are there, not local, correct?
They have an office here.
Okay. And are there any local folks on the team?
Yes, they have an advisory panel that are going to be overlooking the work they do and critiquing it and making comment and adding substance to it, including Dr. Damani Fisher, of the Fisher family, longtime natives here in Sacramento, with Oak Park neighborhood. So he is one of the advisors on this, as well as covering Bounds, who's an African-American retired professor from UC Davis and Sacramento State in the geography program, and her background is in state planning and history. And she served on the preservation commission for about 8 or 9 years before she was turned out. So there are 2 solid citizens who are kind of overlooking what the consultant's doing. I want to also say that we have a 20% of that grant come out is a match to fund community ambassadors. So people that like Don Fortuno here, who is a member of Shiloh Baptist and is pulling together the elders from his congregation that have like 50, 60 years of history with the congregation to organize oral history interviews, and other people who will go out and they will bring people into the process and help gather detail. And then we also have people who are subject matter experts. Milton Harrison, unfortunately, is too busy, but he's the kind of person that we are trying to involve in giving us a critique on what we write and what we research, so that we make sure that we have it right. We're able to get Sushil Bibbs, who did a wonderful documentary that aired on KBIE back during Black History Month on the Higher Sisters, who were Black operatic singers who grew up here in Sacramento back in the 1850s and 60s, and they had international careers. And I would bet you 95% of Sacramento have never heard of the high Sisters. So Sushil Bibbs did a documentary, wrote another book about Elizabeth Pleasant, who was one of the early civil rights pioneers out of San Francisco. So these are some of the people who want to have involved as either subject matter experts or as community ambassadors throughout the community.
So 50,000 for a grant and allocating 20% to go back into community, to the elders, people telling their stories and helping us. So I want to make sure that you all know about the stipends that are available, going to a lot of folks in our community to support them.
Yeah, I just have a real
And
quick question.
please introduce yourself and then ask.
Oh, sure, no problem. Matt Ross, with Workforce Solution Pro and the Elder Family Foundation. I'm just curious, is this the farm? Trumbull, Page and Trumbull?
Page and Turnbull, yes.
I can't see it from there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
You have a question?
Nice.
No, be honest. So
Yeah,
we can-
oh, definitely.
That's
Well,
what's out.
I'm looking at the farm, and it's what, African American Experience Project. I don't see any African Americans on the team,
So,
not one.
so.
I mean,
what
that
you
may
don't-
not be a problem, but then,
No, I think it would definitely be a problem. So let me just say, I was on the review panel.
okay,
I looked at all of the proposals and they are the best. They're gonna get it right.
And that's why we have.
They were smart enough. This is what these folks do. They don't do other things and they just put in a bid for this. They do historic context statements, and that's what you want to know. What is the ultimate product that we're gonna have?
Okay.
And they partnered with Dr. Damani Fisher, who has a PhD in African American history and statistics that is from Sacramento. Ples Fisher, the Don Poole family, Maisha Fisher. So when I saw that brother on there, I knew they were serious because Damani is serious about this work. And so he is a partner on the project. He is not just a face on the screen. He is a partner
okay, just
on this
one,
project.
just one comment and I'll sit down. That the firm, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Mason Tillman and Associates.
They didn't apply.
What's beautiful is
No
that,
problem.
this, born and raised here. This is the beginning, so don't look at this as the end all. This is just the beginning. And there's a lot more resources coming. You don't get nervous.
And I would encourage you all for transparency. There's something called the public records request, and it is free. And it is available to you all. You can request to see the proposals that were submitted, and you can request to see the awarding contract. Now, you tell me who you would select. Come on. and have- This gentleman in the back. Come on.
That's why I was coming. Good evening, everybody. My name is Barry Boyd. I am a long-term community member here and just following on the question that was asked. The rewarded group is a rewarding group. Two individuals that you stated came in after the bid was granted, and then they brought on the two advisors, the African Americans. They are not a part of the actual firm, just so for transparency. So
No, that's not correct. They were not brought on after. So when they submitted the proposal, he was a part of the project. This is not after the fact. So let me just make sure that that is clear. He has been a part of the project from the beginning.
as a consultant, but not as an employee, correct?
He has his own firm.
Correct, so
Yes.
my mistake, when you was brought in, kind of define, being defensive here, one way or the other than which most of us would like to hear our story presented as by us as our history versus they will have the final edit to what goes out. Yes,
They will not.
excuse me, unless the information has changed, Arson or Sean, if you would tell me, do Turnbull, do they have the final edit of the information that goes out as was stated in the grant proposal that they were granted?
The city has the final edit of the document with the input of the public. After two public review periods of the document where it gets circulated out and people have a chance to put eyes on it and provide, that's wrong, please say this, people provide that. So it's really us that have the final. And with you, the public's input.
So
If I can finish, if tomorrow, if you would send me that updated version, because what was read when the RFP request had gone out, that is not what it said. And when they were granted the award, it was listed as they would have the last word. So again, if it has changed, fantastic. I would like to have that information in my hand. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up, because since it's changed, like my point was going to be, if they did have the final edit, then as what was being alluded to, I would prefer all the community members of color to write our history instead of the continued essence of his story that we can get, just to put a final point on it, that's all. But if it has changed to where we have the final say so, fantastic.
Yeah.
So
It's a product that belongs to the city and to the people of Sacramento.
Yeah.
They cannot complete it without a sign off on it. And before we would sign off on it, it has to go to public review. It has to have the opportunity for the community to put their eyes on it. And we're not going to accept a document and just rubber stamp it and sign off on it without public input and without our careful look at all the details.
Well, I'm with you on it, but again, I'm just going by what we're.
And the RFP,
Yeah.
but that's.
Commissioner Boyd, we're gonna get this right. And you're gonna be proud with you're gonna be happy with the product, and I'm gonna be happy with the product. I'm not gonna align myself with anything that I can't stand by. And what I will say is that Page and Turnbull is doing the technical nature of it. They are writing the historic context. They are not telling our story. They can only write what we give them. And so that is why not only is there the historic context, there is the oral history where we hear it directly from your voice, directly from our elders' voices. You can't water that down. You can't rewrite that. We're going to be documented. So we need folks like you involved. But I will tell you that I get it. Government hasn't always done the right thing, but I tell people, look and see the proposals. Before you get mad, if you look at all the proposals and you think we made the wrong decision, then we can have a debate. But don't debate with me when you haven't looked at the proposal.
Well, actually, I have, but I'm not debating that issue. I'm just their choice. And as you said, those who had not applied, to which I would argue quickly, what was the outreach to go after those particular firms to see if in fact they wanted to submit
Let me just say, you don't have a lot of people that do historic context statements. That is a very niche field. So there was nobody here locally that could have did it. We would much rather support a Black organization to do this work, but we have to be honest. We don't have anybody that has experience doing that. And that's the reality. We would have loved to support it, a Black-owned business or organization to do this work. So we had to get creative and create a stipend program to make sure that we do have some point of contact and bringing stuff back into our community. So
And the other issue we're
not denying that, and that they are located out of both Oakland and Los Angeles. So perhaps in Oakland and Los Angeles, there is an African-American firm that does this. So that part of me begs my point. What was the outreach that you guys did citywide, not individualized, in seeking out an African-American firm that is equal to or greater than?
I don't know any African-American firms that do this work. So if you could, so.
we did a lot of outreach, and we mostly say.
Yeah, and we actually pulled back the RFP and resubmitted it to give people more time because we didn't get the amount of submissions that we were looking for. So the RFP was resubmitted. We got feedback from Ms. Daphne Harris about the need for doing additional outreach and having more time for people to respond, and we did that. So. Yeah, can we, so we can, okay, go ahead, and then I want to make sure.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Since it's done, it seems to be done, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a great product in the end of the highest that you wanted, and with the board and some of the other community partners. But I want to make a suggestion. My background is workforce development, and in the past, when I've worked with firms that didn't have a lot of diversity, right? One of the things we would say is, would your firm consider taking on 2 or 3 community residents from Sacramento, bring them in, let them intern, so that maybe 5 years from now, you're not saying the same thing. None of us that could do this, none of us that have a clue, none of us that would qualify to even be on the team. Now, is that an opportunity that might still be open?
We do that through internship.
Okay, so you're
Yeah,
doing
I mean, I think that's 2 different I think that's, yeah.
We have Ashley Green. Okay, we'll be here soon. School right now. So we're here soon. So we did hire 2 African-American interns to help. They're from local colleges now. So we don't.
And again, we're talking about a $50,000 contract. This is not a $5 million contract. This is not a $500,000 contract. So, okay. So I just want to be transparent here. So can you talk a little bit about what is the final product? So besides the oral history, what is the final product going to be? And how can that product be used? And give some examples of how that product could be used.
this question. So we talk about the historic context, that's a study, it's an analysis, it has themes, it has a structure, so it is a physical document. But I think what's more important is how that is used. So we use this to leverage all sorts of other resources. So when you're writing a grant, like when we wrote this grant, we didn't have the history go pull off the shelf and say, these are the things we want to study, because that was the history. So when a future grant, take this study and put that right into their front end material, and they'll have the research and it'll be well documented and embedded, and it will serve for the future grant. So those could be for things like other studies, but they can also be for brick and mortar projects like placemaking, murals, statues, monuments. They can be for grants, and I'm not an expert in this, so those are sort of my wheelhouse, but they could be for grants for economic development, incentives programs, workforce development programs, because you can document the history of the need. And when you have the history, you have the background, and you have that foundation to leverage all of these other future endeavors.
And the information can also be used by planning. When there are development projects that come online, usually at the 11th hour, we discover there's an historic property that's right in the path of the bulldozers, and then we have to try and struggle with the developer to find a way to save it. Here's an opportunity for us to know ahead of time that we have Black historical resources in the path of development, and we can be proactive in planning to incorporate them into a development project that serves it. So that's another.
Before I go, I want to also give another example. So over the last couple of years, I've been trying to build a relationship with JP Morgan and Chase, because they have this Advancing Black Pathways program where they go into communities, help Black folks buy houses, help support the capacity of Black businesses. But they said, you guys don't have enough Black people in Sacramento. We go into areas where there's a large concentration of African Americans. So they're saying, if you can package things up to tell the real story, we're open to the idea. But right now, we're kind of limited on places where there's a large African American presence. So these are some of the things we're hoping that this document would help us seek other money. This is a small amount. We want to be able to take this product with context, historical context statement, and go and apply for other grants. You know, we've heard from Larry Lee at the Sacramento Observer that there's a need to digitize his archives. Well, that's like $3 or $4 million. The city will never have that amount of money to support a project like this. But maybe we can use this product to seek additional funding so he can digitize his archive. So I just want you guys to see the bigger picture, that this is the start to create something to document our history in our voice so that other people don't do it. So that's essentially what this project is doing. And so we need the criticisms, because we want to get this right. You know, this is something we haven't done before. And so I say it's constructive criticism because we want to get it right, right? And so please, you know, we going down the wrong path, tell us so we can make sure we get it right.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One, what is the timeline of the project? Second is, where will the deliverable, where will the final product live? Who owns this? Will it be at the city hall? Will it be in the library here, in the public libraries? And the third question is, where will the oral histories live? Is there going to be a new archive, a digital archive built, and will that be accessible to the people while the project is going on, rather than waiting until it's finished?
So let's start with the timeline. What's the timeline of the project?
So the project goes through to the end of May of next year. That'll allow us to have lots of public outreach. It'll give us the opportunity for the community to put their eyes on the written documents, on what we call the historic context statement, and make sure we got the details of that right. And let's see, so what was the second?
Where is it gonna live?
It's gonna live chiefly in the Center for Sacramento
history, which is the city's archive.
Mhm.
But copies will be made available, physical copies for the libraries. And then there'll be an online presence on the planning web pages where people can go and they can go to a link and they can see the document and they can get other details. I think there's some elements of the project that will live at the organizations that participate, like the Home Use Shiloh Baptist Church, for example. They're helping do a dance-driven effort to involve the elders in Shiloh to record their oral history. So, of course, they own those, they're going to get that collection of their own stories back. And the Center for Sacramento History creating a bigger archive that'll include the Shiloh stories, but also any other members of the community who recall oral history. We have students from Sacramento State who've already gone out, and who have gone out with their graduate program in history and they recorded oral history. So we have a number of oral histories that have come in. Also, the research that the consultants do, the research or the documents people submit, all of these will go into one selection so that anything we don't get right, hopefully that doesn't happen, but someone can come back and look at that record again. It's sort of that history work. If they look at what you did 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, and they look at what you look at with new eyes, and they look at it again. So that record will be there. So they'll be able to go back and.
So the oral histories will be available for public.
Oral history will, and so will the other documents that have been, people have submitted stories that their family history, that their family has done research, that their great grandparents, when they were younger, and studies of cemeteries and burials, all over the Professor Durst, fascinating studies and documents, and those are going to reflect as well. So it'll be a comprehensive.
So they're accessible now, though? Like, do we have to wait till they're processed, or can we just start going in there and as they're being added, and as soon as, you know what I mean, then they can be available for public consumption?
Probably need a few months to get things in order.
Cataloged and indexed.
But then there'll be a permanent archive of the surface history that public can access, and then we'll, whatever we can do online on the city's webpage, include that.
So if the NAACP is having a Black History Month celebration, could they request some of the oral histories or something to?
Yeah, they can request it directly from the center. They can go to the center and come to them themselves. They'll be very accessible.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, maybe I'm missing something, but it seems like this project is like very important. You have a ton of people, right? And I'm trying to figure out why the investment is so small. Why is it just 50,000? Is there more money in the pipeline, or?
Because that's what the grant, this was an external, so this was a grant that the city went out and applied for.
Oh.
So the city didn't have to do it, right? They found a grant and applied for it to do it. So yeah, we're just being transparent. This is the money we got. And so we're being transparent with you.
And the reality of it is that there's very little money in preservation. We're asked for $80,000 in probably a $200,000 job. And they cut us back to 50,000 because there's so much demand for the little money that's available at the state and federal.
And Mr. Ross, I'm so glad you asked that. So Jay King is raising some additional funds for the North area because he wants to provide more community stipends for his area. So I know you and Mr. Wilson got a lot of money. So you guys are more than welcome to raise the money for this project. We will pay you. And I will give him a shout out that October 15th, he is having God's Trying to Tell You Something at the convention center. So please go and support that October 15th. I
would like to talk with you afterwards.
Oh, we like that.
So what's going to be the deciding factor to whose story you listen to? When I say you, I'm speaking, who and what story you listen to, because you're going to get a lot of stories out there. And I know you cannot do them all. Maybe you can, I don't know. So I know we as Neighborhood Association, we done stuff with Capital Public Radio that's supposed to be overall Bridget football or something. in their archives. And that was selected just for the Meadowview area. So I want to go to selective process that you're gonna utilize, but you can't capture everybody. So can you expand on that?
I will say, I'm not telling nobody they can't tell their story. So if you got a story to tell, we're gonna listen to it. And
You're gonna
so
shake it out.
we're not taking out stories.
I said, shake it out.
I'm not shaking out, I'm not gonna be the one to tell somebody their story didn't make it. So we want to capture, and it's different perspectives, right? And so, and that's the beauty of hearing the story, right?
Right.
There are stories that I heard about the guy that burned the school down. I heard from my mom, and then I heard it from somebody else, and it was funny because it was basically the same stuff, but it's good to hear different points of view from the same story, right? So at this point, we're not cutting off stories,
It might be
right?
good to understand the process. So the way it's set up, right, the way it's set up right now, the way the program, like I said, we have these researchers going out and looking at the then the oral history component, we had graduate students do some oral history. We have some project partners that we met with, and we had a meeting and just talked about ways to make the project better. And they said 15 oral histories, not enough. You can't tell the African American experience. 15 long-form oral histories. You need to do better. So we got together, we thought, okay, how do we do this? And this is just internal. And we talked about resources, $50,000 grant. Our department, we hired 2 interns. We have 2 volunteers helping out. Kelly Rivas has got a grant that she worked cross researching with. So there's a lot of other resources the city's putting into it that's not part of that 50,000. And part of that is this oral history. So we have a website. Anybody can go to the website. We have a training video that Jenny Hahn helps us film that teaches people how to do oral history. We have sample questions on the website. So anybody can record an oral history, they can ask those questions or any questions, or someone can just tell a story they think is important, interesting. And they can tell that story, it can be uploaded onto the website. That becomes part of this collection that I mentioned. And then, so we're not taking anything out of that. Anything that goes in there becomes part of the collection. It gets organized by theme, and it gets accessible to future researchers. Our consultants will look through and review all that material. They're not going to cut anything out of the collection, but they'll put the stories into the themes they develop. So they have an outline with various themes that the person went over in the beginning, but it's how they're organizing all the information. And all of those stories, some will fit nicely into the themes, some may not. Some may be themes that are interesting and may fit into some other project, but they'll stay in the collection. But we'll organize the information in those themes, and then the narrative document with expert photographs and historical research will tie everything together in this thematic narrative that talks about African American history in Sacramento from the very early settlers that came here all the way to the most recent past that we can gather.
And what is that cutoff? What's the most recent one? 1960, 80, 2000?
There's a lot happened here in the 70s. We had our first Black police officers in numbers in the 70s. And we had, the fruits of the Black Power movement happening in the early 70s, mid 70s. And Black Panthers.
And why not always at the current day with our first African American people police?
So we try to, as a general tenet, we try to stop it far enough back so that we have some historical perspective on events. Because if it comes all the way up to the current time, then politics and emotion and other things get sort of muddy the historical record. So that's why generally it's 50 years ago, but we're going to go up all the way to 1980 because I think we still gain some historical perspective.
I was just gonna say though, the oral history archive is something separate from the written document.
Absolutely.
So it seems to me like if people wanted to submit stories of current African Americans, that's a separate thing. And then that's still being preserved for future generations. And it's still part of the historical record.
Very important because
Absolutely.
personal stories round out the storyline. The professional historians will get what's in the books and what's in the newspapers and the magazines, but we need the stories from people's lived experiences to really have a complete, rounded out history.
I'm gonna go here and then here.
Okay, I would to ask, I know they said, you guys said there wasn't much money or involved, but I'm thinking like, I really would love to see the youth, like high school students more involved in this, because just to give you an idea, at the museum, we started a docent program for young people, 15, 16 years old. And for them they had to learn a lot of the history of the museum and the pride that they felt. And when they were given tours, how people were impressed with how much they know. Something about the youth, I wish there's stipends out there that high school students can get involved, because maybe their great grandparent lived in the area for a long time, or their great grandparent, and for them to be involved in something like this whole process from the beginning to the end would be powerful, and especially around their mental health. I mean, the pride that you feel to know that you as a Black person we have all this history in Sacramento. So I just want to throw it out there. So please, everybody, look for money to get some high school students
I
involved.
think that's a great idea, and even providing some stipends to young folks to capture their elder stories, right?
Yes.
And I think for the city, we have to be leery about having kids go into adults' homes. So as long as it's their family and things from a liability perspective, don't want to have folks go, but we definitely want to figure out creative ways to do that.
And there's a big role for young people in recording oral histories of the elders in the community, so we should talk afterwards about how the museum and city staff can work together on that. I also say something very briefly about the stipend. So I want to kind of clarify how the stipends are working right now. So this is a new program that the city is trying to expand on, this idea of racial equity, economic equity, to pay people to be part of projects like this. So in the past, we just say, okay, volunteers, people with extra time on their hands, come and help us. But we're trying to compensate people for meaningful participation on projects like this. So we actually applied for a supplemental grant to this project to try to stand up this stipend program. And we really need people to come to us and tell us how they'd like to be involved in the project, and how they'd like to participate, how much time they'd like to contribute. And then we can look at our stipend budget and provide people stipends. So Clarence Caesar is one of our subject matter experts. He's a local Black historian. He's already reviewing documents for us. So I talked about this outline. He's given us great feedback and comments on that outline. So we're going to stipend him for he's spent 2 hours on this. We're going to issue him a stipend. So we've just got this program actually like approved by all the people above me, all the city attorney folks. So how they could be. It's up and running, and we're looking for people to come to us and say, I want to get back to the project. This is the way I can help. I want a stipend for it, and okay, how much time and try to figure out and try to negotiate what's the kind of offer out of our project. So it's up and running. It's there. If you have people like students who maybe have a small stipend, they want to go to oral history, we can give them a stipend. We're happy to look at it. So bring us. Let's talk, please.
Did you ask your question? No, not yet. Just real quickly, you mentioned that there is a website for people to submit their oral history. So I was kind of wanted to get clear on, are people submitting individually, or is that coordinated through the project leads? And I can't recall the actual name, but like, are those being coordinated through those project lead persons?
Both. So we're trying to make it as easy. Some people trying to figure out how to submit it online may be too difficult. We're telling people you can submit, you can have your grandkid record it on your iPhone and send it in. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. We even have some interns, college interns that can come out and actually record as well. So we're trying to meet folks where they are.
And then we'll just use the guidelines and questions on the website for them to answer to start facilitating their story.
Yes, there's a link on we have our main page. So if you Google African American Experience Project Sacramento, and you get our main page. About the middle of the page, there's a link. It says contribute oral histories. You'll click on that link, it takes you to a second page. And on that second page, there's a video right there. The fastest way to figure out how the program works. If somebody wants to do it on their own, click that button and you'll have a training video and it'll walk you through how to record oral history and then how to upload it onto the forum on the website.
Before you, I will go to.
So, you know, our history is not predicated on the city center. We were here long before that. And so the first black church west of the city downtown, the history is there. First Baptist Church was founded in the basement of the Chinese Baptist Church. And we were not Americans. We were not, you know, human beings. We're black people here in California. And the whole state of California named after Africa. So we can go on and on and on with the history. But we're not going to like wait on city of Sacramento to say what grandmama taught us. So the notion that this money is like inside the house and there's good people in there. And I think Lynette, for what she's doing, she's like, I'm proud of you. Because she speaks, you know, I know her mama and daddy very well. Very, 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 very well. And just today, if some of y'all saw what they're doing in Washington, D.C. with the president, with the ag secretary, because, you know, people come from the center slave here in Sacramento, slave occupiers in old Sacramento. Yeah. And the documentation is there.
So you gonna record your oral?
No, I'm not recording. I need mine. No, okay, I'm gonna say this.
Record right now, so we got.
But I ain't worried about that. I ain't gonna go, I can't do that.
Okay.
The Secretary of State that has all the archives, 40 years in our study program, the Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Webb. The superintendent of public schools is an African man, and he got some Latino culture in him, and this was like Mexico for like 300 years. So we don't have to like just look at this $50,000 as the end all. This is the beginning to have a room like this. It's the beginning. To have a room like this. Because we have a thing called the Black United Fund, and black folks would put no money in. Because black folks didn't think that their history was worth recognizing. And I'm saying that from like putting $50,000 20 years ago of my money into the pot. Well, because that's what I do. I was my $50,000. I'm hollering about my $50,000 to set up an African museum. So I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna leave it alone. Diane Miller, who runs the Pan-African, no, she doesn't run Pan, that's someone. Diane Miller runs the Underground Railroad Network for Freedom. So there's a whole list of over thousands and thousands of people of African descent that were here in California. It's already documented. Some of y'all might know Joe Moore and Shirley Moore. The record is there, but they stole it, erased it, threw it in the garbage.
But we gotta start somewhere, Mr.
No, it's over there. I'm just saying, no, I'm saying this is good. I'm just saying, if we, the people in this room, worrying about $50,000, just put $20 in.
Yeah. I
And
appreciate
give it to this brother, because this family been here and documented.
I want to be mindful of time and I want to make sure you guys have time to eat and to socialize. And so, before I turn it over to Daniel Hahn, I do want to call out, we had a couple extra people in here. Bettina Cross, thank you for coming. Black small business owner here in Sacramento, thank you for coming. And then we talk about Black history and the Black Panthers, and we got one sitting here, right here. So we got Dale McKinney, who spent 15 years in prison, wrongly accused of killing a police officer in Oak Park, if I'm not mistaken. And so, and I may be wrong, because I need for him to tell his story and not me telling his story. So Mr. McKinney, and then came out and became an attorney. And an electrician, because he's an electrician too. So, thank you. And his wife did everybody here in the neighborhood too. So I do want to appreciate him. But now I want to turn it over to our former and first African-American police chief, Daniel Hahn. Can you talk about why you accepted the offer to be involved in this project and what this project means to you? I just want to turn the floor over to you.
Sure. Y'all, I'm standing between your food and you, so I'm not gonna take that. But I just want to say I'm not part of the city of Sacramento government anymore. Was for 34 years. And I'm not part of the consulting firm. So the only reason I'm here on my own time, I'm not getting paid one penny, just like none of y'all get paid one penny to be here. But you know, I first want to say, Mr. Fisher, just so you know, how you should support this. One of the reasons is Mr. Fisher's son, Ples Fisher, went to the greatest high school in California. I might be in the wrong neighborhood. That would be Sac High, just so y'all know where he went to school at. That's the Harvard of the West. But when Ples and I were in high school together, I hated history. I thought there was no use for history. I thought, why are we looking backwards? We should look forward. I wish I could say that was the only class I thought that about. I probably thought that about all my classes, but I wasn't the greatest student. But as an adult, I've become fascinated by history. So I've been researching history for like 10 years, and I'll be doing it for the rest of my life. Now I teach it all over the place, to corrections, to police department, I teach it at Sac State, all these different places. And here's part of the reason why. If we don't capture our history, it's lost. And so think about how now, if your parents are gone, my mom passed in 2018, how much do you wish you would have sat down more with her or him and recorded what they had, because you will never get that opportunity, right? And so even though they might have told you some things, they didn't tell you everything, and those things are gone once they're gone. And so I hear so often, especially when I teach history classes and stuff like that, and ask people questions about, for example, just as one example, how come the Heights and Oak Park and Meadowview are the way they are? I've never got a right answer ever. People believe the things we've been led to believe that is factually wrong. Those neighborhoods didn't become that way because of the way most people think, including many people in Oak Park. I can tell you, I've lived every day of my life in the city. And I grew up in Oak Park, and I had no clue about the history of Oak Park. I went to school in Oak Park. Sac High was 2 blocks from my house. And never once was I taught about the history of Oak Park. I just always assumed Oak Park was the way it was when I grew up there. You know, the end of my youth was the crack epidemic. I always thought Oak Park was like that. I never knew Oak Park was different than what that was. I never knew what precipitated that change and all those sort of things. I never knew anything about Highway 99 or the West End or any of that stuff. I was never taught that, and I was educated in this. So I think that this is a great project, and I will, something Lynette said earlier, or Sean, one of them, I can't tell you how important it is in my mind to help, like the Observer, for example, preserve the rich history that they have. There are other cities in the South and the East Coast, Black newspapers, that did get a couple $1 million to preserve that history. Because if we don't preserve the history, the documents and all that, they will be just destroyed by time, just by lights and other things. So, you know, 50,000, like many people have said, is just the beginning. I think with the momentum, maybe there can be more funding for things like preserving the archives. And so our kids can learn what we didn't, right? And that's what needs to be preserved, so people understand, you know, every time I talk to somebody why the Heights and Oak Park and Meadowview are that way, is all I ever hear from everybody, well, people just get a job. If the dads would be in the house. Those people are just violent in those neighborhoods. But that's factually not how those neighborhoods became. It's just a mistruth based in bias and all sorts of other things. So people understand the truth. And we often say this project is for the African-American community. It's not for the African-American. It's for all of us. It's for the whole community. Because non-African-American community needs to know this history just as much as African-American community does. And the African-American community does not know our history either. We don't. I didn't. Like, I was never taught this. And so if you think about places like, I just read an article a couple weeks ago that Tulsa, Oklahoma, over the last couple of years has created a whole curriculum around Black Wall Street that occurred in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I always ask my classes, who's heard of Black Wall Street? Every once in a while, there's 1 or 2 people that raise their hand. I've heard of Black Wall Street. I go, where was it? I've not had a person yet that knows where it was, or indeed they heard the term. Well, I have met people that grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma that didn't know about Black Wall Street. Right? It happened to that same thing as I didn't know about Oak Park. So it's why we get away with saying these protests, this unrest, the times that riots in our city are unprecedented. No, they're not. They're not unprecedented. We've had riots in Oak Park. We've had riots around the country for the exact same reason we're having riots and protests now. But if you don't know that history, you don't know about busing and the sixties of African Americans to the north, to President Kennedy's house and those sort of things, you would not recognize that it's exactly the same as what we're doing right now with the Hispanic community. So I just ask you, one of the things that really hooked me on this project is the ability to interview people and record them, their voice, their face, their everything. I've interviewed several people. I've given several of our elders names and phone numbers of their kids so they can help facilitate their elderly parents to Sean. And I think that is critical to hear it in people's own voice. So not only do they describe what factually happened, but they put context around it and all that. So I really encourage you, somebody here asked about the submitting videos. I've never once been told no by Sean or anybody else about people I've referred to them or people interviews I've done. I don't think they can have enough videos. If somebody wants to sit there for 2 weeks straight and watch videos, I have a feeling they're gonna be able to do that. I hope there are some people that do that. But if we don't capture the history, every year it's lost a little bit more and more and more. And I was, I have a master's degree, which had history in every one of those levels, from elementary school to high school to undergraduate to graduate. Not once was I taught about any of the stuff that I teach. Not one time, not once. So I really encourage you to provide feedback. And the last thing I'll say is somebody, I think this gentleman right here asked, where will this live? How will people see it, basically? I think this group can help with that. I think the more ways we get this information in a understandable, consumable way that people actually pay attention, that 15-year-old will actually pay attention to it, right? It's probably gonna have to be done in a certain way to get different groups of people to pay attention. I think that's what this group can help with, because I don't get any feeling from the city or Sac State or anybody else that there's limits on how they are willing to disperse this information. And so this group can be very helpful for that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And so before we close this out and go get some food, next steps is, if there are people that are missing in this discussion, we need their names and contact information. So before you leave, either get my card or Sean or Carson's card and send us the names, the email, tell us how we need to, do they take emails, is it cell phone, do we need to call, text, so that we can make sure we get the right people to the table. So that's next steps. We will, if you have signed in, we'll make sure that you are involved when we have the next meeting. When there's an opportunity to review the draft, we want to make sure that you are involved. So it's not like you came and then don't hear anything. We are going to make sure that we report back on this process. So thank you guys for coming. Is there anything else you would all like to say?
Joe's outside with Big Daddy's.
Big Daddy's is outside, and so please get a hamburger and some salad and mac and cheese before you leave. Commissioner Boyd is here.
Thank you. When will the next meeting be, or is there going to be a follow-up?
There's one in October tentatively in Del Paso Health.
Probably in early October in Del Paso Heights, we will be sending out. That's something that you should be aware of. If you signed in, we're gonna put all those emails into our email list, so you'll get future emails. But if we miss you, or if we can't read handwriting or something, it's always safer to go online to the website and you can sign up to receive email alerts. So if you do that, you'll get an email with the notice for the meeting when it goes out. And then of course we do our best.
The fire guys are always the first in line for the food.
Yeah.
The sign-up sheet is over here.
PD is always second. Look at it.
You just follow them.
Again, thank you guys so much for coming.
Early October.
Thank you.